Hello everyone, welcome to SAMA episode 161. SAMA is a program which invites experts to discuss a topic from their area of expertise. In this episode, we are lucky to have Dato Dr. Suriyakhatun Osman. Suriyakhatun is a lecturer and the International Director of the Malaysian Homeopathic Medical Association, and she's been in that position from 1997 to 2010. She owns the Klinik Taqwa in Malaysia, and she's had that since 1985. During her career, she has published multiple books and journal articles. With us to explain the importance of our microbiome, how it directly affects our health, and what we can do to ensure our microbiome is healthy. Suriyakhatun is a medical doctor specializing in homeopathy. She earned her postgraduate diploma in reproductive health from the College of GPs Malaysia in 1992. She studied homeopathy in Malaysia and is a member of Faculty of Homeopathy in the UK. Now today's seminar is rather special because I've actually known Suriyakhatun for a number of years. In fact, she was one of the very first supporters of Spooky and the Spooky products. And so she was one of the very first people to buy products from us. And she incorporates Spooky products in her healing clinic. So welcome to our show, Suriyakhatun. It's marvelous to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you, John, for actually inviting me.
Now, the subject we're going to talk about today is it's down and dirty, and people don't really realize how important it is. But our largest natural immune organ is our gut and our stomach, our digestive system, and we've got little animals that live there, don't we?
Oh, yes, we certainly do.
And so they also play a very important role to play, keeping the body in balance and keeping the invaders at bay. Can you explain to us why the microbiome is so important?
Well, actually, I think more than 90% of our immune system is in the guts.
Yes.
And we actually have a lot of bacteria, viruses, as well as fungi in the guts.
Yes.
And we're not even aware of it. And the thing is that we only discovered it quite recently, actually. I think it's only about 20 years ago that people started, the researchers started to realize that the guts had a lot of organisms that were actually important. You see, in the human breast milk, there is an oligosaccharide. Human milk has got an oligosaccharide, and a human being cannot absorb this. It's an insoluble sugar. It's a sugar that is not. We can't utilize it. We can't utilize an oligosaccharide.
Right.
And they thought that why is this useless thing inside the milk? The mother's milk has this useless thing. So, we human beings, we think we are everything. We think that we know everything. And actually, we don't know most of the things. So actually, that oligosaccharide in the mother's milk was there to feed our microbiome and help it to grow.
Right.
And so they've just recently discovered that, there's something useful in the milk. And of course, you know that formula milk never had this, So that was a huge difference between giving human milk and formula milk, because formula milk didn't have any prebiotics. They didn't have anything to feed the little animals that you call them that are living in us.
Right.
Can you imagine that? And we think that we're so great. And when during my mother's generation, they even thought that formula milk is everything and human milk is nothing, which is really I don't know what to say about it, because that's how arrogant we human beings are. We think that we can create something better than nature, better than God. Don't you think so?
Not possible though, is it? Not at all possible. Now I believe you've got a presentation that you can step us through.
Yes, I do. Yeah, yeah, I do. Shall we get to it?
Yes, yes,
Okay,
we'll,
right. Let's share now. Okay, here we are. Human microbiome. Let's just set it to slideshow from the beginning. All right. The human microbiome and our health. John, I usually speak in my own language, Bahasa, and it's been a long, long time. You know why? Because of the 2 years I haven't been able to go anywhere, and I haven't had to speak English all the way. So I hope I succeed. But if I let slip a few Malay words, please remind me or something.
oh, no, it's no problem. You're
Because
doing,
I'm actually bilingual. I mean, I speak at least two languages, and maybe Arabic is another one. So let's just get going with this. All right. Mm. Okay, so what is the human microbiome? Some things are known and some things are unknown. Actually, this microbiome, sometimes it just cannot be cultured. You know, when you try to culture, some of the things don't grow very well.
right.
But I think because we are now able to examine the DNA, so we begin to discover that actually there's a lot of these things in our body, a lot of these little creatures, and every human being have about 600 to 1,000 or even more of this different species of this microbiome, these microbes. And they actually exert a really, really major influence on hormones, on appetite, on the immune system, on the neurotransmitters, and even your genes. And I'm beginning to suspect that actually they are, talking to us via frequencies, John. I think that will be you'll be familiar with the word frequencies, of course. You're doing a lot of work with frequencies.
Yes.
So I believe that frequencies, they're transmitting frequencies that are communicating with the human body. All right. So actually, if you were to weigh down the number of body cells, the number of cells in our body, and
Yes.
I'm sure there's really, really a lot of those.
Yes.
But actually, we actually have more microbes than we have cells in our body. Can you just imagine that? We have more microbes than we have cells in our body, and actually, each human being is like the earth to humans.
Yes.
So there are creatures on us and inside us, and they are helping us despite us not knowing that they are helping us.
Right.
So there are microbiome, there are different microbes on the skin, and then there are microbiomes living in our, even in the conjunctiva of our eyes, inside our mouth, and of course, definitely in our guts. Okay,
Right.
and they even believe, in fact, they know that there are microbiomes in the placenta, and
Gosh.
when a baby is born, they already have some microbiome even before they get the initial dose from their mothers. It's a bit gross, but the thing is that you swallow gunk from your mother's birth passages before you're born, and you get your mom's microbiome.
It's not gross at all, actually. When you think about it, it's perfectly natural. I guess in the highly sanitized world we live in, where we're told to sanitize, use disinfectant soaps and get everything that's non-human cells off our skin and with antibiotics and everything is so pristine, and yet our health is
Yeah.
getting worse. And then this is why we actually need a lot of these microbiome um, cells.
And I just can't
Uh,
believe that some women actually opt to have a cesarean section because they don't want to give birth vaginally.
yeah,
Because, they think that, oh, it's better to,
I
take the
understand.
baby out from the window rather than to go through the whole process of giving birth naturally. And
Right.
it's really ridiculous because what you're doing is that you're depriving your child of the initial microbiome, the initial inoculation of the microbiome.
Yes.
by giving birth by cesarean section. All
Right.
right. And
Yeah.
the thing is that some babies, they're born and they just born a bit prematurely, or sometimes they kind of like don't have enough oxygen and all, and then the doctors put them in an incubator
Mm.
and give them prophylactic antibiotics. Hello. I think the age of antibiotics and of thinking that antibiotics are the answer to everything should
Mm.
have ended by now. But
Sure.
I think doctors, they are always about 20 years too late, 20 years in catching up. So I guess
Right.
it's going to be another 20 years before they realize that they are harming the little babies by giving them antibiotics at birth. I see so many of these cases. I see cases where who shouldn't be getting eczema and all that. And the
Yes.
main reason is that because they were given prophylactic. Can you believe that? Prophylactic antibiotics at birth. Okay.
It's terrible.
So how many different organisms are there normally? Okay. So in the mouth there are about 600 species, in the skin about 600, and in the intestines there are about 8,000 species. But believe me, the modern man doesn't have that many. Okay.
Right.
The species have really started to disappear. You think only dinosaurs disappear? Even the microbiome starting to disappear, you know.
Gosh.
And the vagina has got more than 200 species. And so this is what we have on us. Okay. Fungi, we do
Mm.
have parasites and bacteria and viruses. Parasites are like worms and all, right?
Yes.
Flukes and all. And of course, we think that parasites are bad for us, but we never know. I think that in some cases, there are parasites that are actually beneficial. We don't really know, but
Right.
I've read about it. I didn't go deep into it, but even the worms have a role.
Mm.
Imagine. So, where do we get our microbiome? As I told you earlier, the first microbiome of the child, of the baby, is from the mother. So
Mm.
when they pass through the birth passages, the mother has got the mucous membrane, and inside the mucous membrane there is a microbiome, which is why it is actually extremely important to make sure that the mother's microbiome is all good,
Yes.
because we kind of I kind of realize from treating patients that among the worst things that can happen is a child inheriting from the mother bad microbiome. For
Mm.
example, if the mother had candidiasis, so a lot of candida in the vaginal passages,
Yes.
which means to say that the mother also has candida in her intestines,
Mm.
and the baby will inherit that candida from
Mm.
the mother. And babies who have candida from the mother will develop ringworm. And ringworm, you think, okay, ringworm is not so bad. And then they will develop some kind of eczema. But worse than that, they might actually get some delayed speech, for example, or even autism and all that, because the gut bacteria speaks to the brain
Yes.
via neurotransmitters. So with a lot of candida, the good bacteria can't grow very well.
Right.
Because I always put it like this. For example, if we have a neighborhood, okay, a neighborhood, and in all neighborhoods there are the good citizens, and they form the majority, right? The
Mm.
good citizens in the neighborhood form the majority, and then there are some of these hooligan types, but they're not the majority. And because there's so many good citizens, they kind of know their place and keep their place, all right? But supposing there are not enough good citizens, then the hooligans will grow more, more bold, and they will grow in numbers,
Mm.
and then they'll take over the neighborhood. So this is candida. This is what candida is. There is candida in our gut. Everybody has candida, but there are hooligans that are kept in place by the good citizens, and the good citizens are our good microbiome, our probiotics.
Mm.
Okay, so in a mother who has a candida infection, the child will get the neighborhood with the hooligans. Okay, controlling the environment. Okay, and the other place that we get our, actually the mothers get it from the environment, farming communities versus industrialized nations, they have different sets of microbiomes. They have different sets. And there was one research, when Germany united, they were able to do a very good research in the sense that they were in the same area, but they were divided, right? So one was a very rural community where animals were in the house and all that, and the other one was a very sanitized, very clean environment and all that. So what they found was that allergies were more prevalent in the supposedly sanitized environments. It could also be the food as well. Okay, it could also be the food that we eat, and we will see about that here.
Okay.
So I'll go back to that. I'll go back to that, the different types of the microbiome depending on the environment. But I'm talking about how the microbiome. You see, when the baby is born, it's not immediately that they have a good gut colony. It takes time. Okay, so phase one, the gut is supposed to be sterile, but I really don't think that it is that sterile, because we found out that even the placenta have got their own microbiome. Okay, so it's probably that the baby does have some microbiome to start with. But anyway, the initial colonization is from the mother, from the birth passage. All
Right.
right, and of course, probably whatever is there in the hospital. So I don't think that a hospital is a very good place to give birth to, because we have really bad bacteria in the hospital. Maybe we should start thinking about isolating birth centers from hospitals. We should think about that, so that
Right.
the bad bacteria won't get into us.
Yes.
And then phase three is breastfeeding. And of course, when you have bottle fed babies, especially when their formulas do not have any microbiome or prebiotics, then you have a problem there. Okay, one thing about the breast milk, I forgot to mention that actually breast milk itself have got microbiome. So you actually have microbiome inside the breast milk.
Right.
And they have bifidobacteria, and they have what we call the oligosaccharides. Okay, so in a bottle fed, they'll get more of the what I called the hooligans just now, the bacteroids and the clostridial species. These are the bad guys. Okay,
Right.
they are present even in the good guts, but they are present in small amounts. Whereas if you bottle feed a child, they will be present in large amounts.
Right.
And if you notice, I'm one person who always looking at the what's inside a formula, and one of the main things in a formula is sugar. Okay, breast milk has got sugar too, in the form of lactose, mom's lactose, human lactose. But
Right.
the breast, that's breast milk. But the formula milk, it has all kinds of sugar. For example, corn syrup, which is actually not a very good sugar. It is really, really not a very good sugar. It encourages the bad bacteria. All right. So after that, phase four is moving to the adults, flora. All of you, I think, if you have babies in the house, and if you had to change a nappy, and you would have that typical uh, poo smell of a baby, it's a slightly sour, slightly sweetish odor, and that is actually because of the microbiome. Okay, and then when they grow bigger and they start eating, and their stools turn a bit brown, and the smell becomes quite different. All right. So how does the microbiome affect our health? All right. So as I said before, the most of them are in the intestines, and it communicates with the rest of the body, and it controls quite a number of functions. It has even been called the second brain, because what happens in our guts affects our brain. So I already mentioned this, so maybe this is just a summary that the the environment and the mother, and this one affects the guts of the baby. So I guess if you have a baby in Asia and a baby in Europe and a baby in East Europe or a baby in Africa, they will all have a different set of microbiomes. And this is the way that is transmitted vertically and horizontally as well. And the development of the local community is shaped by the host selection and based on interactions between the host and the bacterial cell. Actually, the baby, babies like to put things in their mouth, and babies like to explore, and they like to go on the tables and yeah, in every nook and corner of the house. And I think they collect, in doing so, in putting things in their mouth, they are actually collecting their microbiome as well. So maybe mothers think that they should have a very sterile house, uh, but maybe not. Let's see what happens. Okay, so this is a picture I got from the internet of hunter-gatherers. They are very nice people there, and they're usually in the hot countries. That's why they don't wear much clothes. And hunter-gatherers means to say that they are not farming communities, so they kind of eat root vegetables and fruits, and then animals, right? They don't eat grain. So root vegetables tend to have a lot of fiber. So the microbiome that they have will be ones that can actually digest and process the carbohydrates, which are actually not available to the person eating them unless the bacteria deals with it first. So they don't take antibiotics and they don't take drugs. And in the Western diet, of course, we have ultra processed food, and I think everybody takes drugs. Very few people don't take drugs, and I'm one of them who doesn't take drugs. Okay, I never take drugs unless I'm very sick and I need to take them to save my life. I think that's it. Okay, so there was this study, and it supports the idea that the diet is the most important driver of the microbiome in the human being. And we are what we eat is actually not something to be laughed at. So as you can see, I've put here in these two pictures. One is a picture of natural foods, things that don't need to be processed, that you can pick off the tree or that you can harvest and boil or cook in some way and eat. Or maybe with some, you just don't have to do anything. You just eat them right off. But over here, you can see the processed foods that we are eating right now. So many of that. And some of us really don't see any of the real foods at all. All we see is the processed foods. Over here in Malaysia, many people like to eat instant mee. And of course, this instant mee is made in such a way that it's almost indigestible, unless it's the better type. Then you have this thing that comes in a packet, and it has all the flavors that you need. And even some of the vegetables there, they're all dried up, and you just put it there, and you add hot water, you boil it for a while, and then you eat it. And many people even survive on that. And I do not know. I think I actually know what it does to the health,
Right.
because especially this past 2 years, whereby we've been undergoing lockdown after lockdown after lockdown, and still not helping with the cases. That many people have only dried food in the house. So some people have actually started surviving off this instant meal and maybe some rice and all that. And what I've seen happen is that many people are getting depressed. And I think that many mental illnesses are coming out. Children are getting into tantrums, and of course, the skin is acting up. And I think that these past 2 years, if only we had done a study on the microbiome before this disaster happened to us and after, we'll find that there is a huge shift in the microbiome that have tended towards being less healthy. This is what I think, but can't be proven, of course, because we don't have a before and after picture. I
Right.
don't think anybody thought about doing a study on a microbiome before the disaster, because we didn't know that there was going to be a disaster anyway.
You mentioned
This
that sorry. You mentioned
Yeah.
that the natural foods, the vegetables, and fruit are better for the microbiome. Um, but
Yes, they are.
but after boiling, surely the microbiome would die.
Pardon?
After the food is cooked, like you've got broccoli and peas.
No, no. It's not. It's not as if the food contains the microbiome that you need. Of course, the food that is not cooked will have some bacteria on it, right? Bacteria and all that, and so we do swallow it. But actually, our acid gets rid of most of it before it can reach the guts. So what I'm saying is that they, the fibrous foods, the fiber, they have prebiotics. They have prebiotics. So these prebiotics are actually insoluble, indigestible for a human being, but they are food for the bacteria that's colonizing our guts. So it's not as if we swallow the microbiome and that's what grows in us, but the microbiome is already there. We got it from before, and it has to either grow or die, and it can only grow if it has been given food. So the microbiome does not eat the food that we eat. It does in a way, but it doesn't take from our nutrition. What it does is that it takes the nutrition from the parts that are not digestible to us. We call them the prebiotic. So, probiotics are the microbiome themselves. That means to say, if we swallow a probiotic that has been specially designed to dissolve in the intestines and will actually colonize our intestine, then we call it a probiotic. But a prebiotic is a food that has got uh, food for the bacteria. You got that? Okay, so this processed food, on the other hand, the refined and the processed food, they do not have a lot of this food for the bacteria. On the other hand, they have a lot of food for the pathogens, the bad ones, the hooligans. Why? Because the processed food is high in sugar and high in chemicals, additives, food additives, right? Like what do you call it? Um, uh, Preservatives,
Yes.
dye, coloring, and flavoring.
Mm.
Now, those hooligans, they love this, but the good bacteria, they don't want it. You know, it doesn't give them any nutrition. But this is good food for the hooligans. So they like to eat all this. Okay. So I kind of think that, children who like to eat junk food, children who like to eat food with lots of additives and all that, they're doing it because the bacteria, the bad bacteria, the hooligans are telling them to. Why? Because it's food for the bad bacteria. Whereas if we have got a lot of good bacteria in our gut, we will be wanting more of the natural foods. So it works both ways. Kind of works both ways. All right. So what kind of like when you start taking all the processed food, you'll be addicted to it. So I just want to mention that the skin have got microbiomes, and the gut microbiome does affect the skin. I'm not going to say much about it, but it has got a bearing on what our usual practices are. You see, because commercially they are selling, antiseptic soaps and saying that if you play in the dirt, you're going to get sick because all these germs are going to affect you and make you sick, and so you come home and you use an antiseptic soap. Actually, that's not the way to do it, because we will remove the good bacteria on our skin that's actually protecting our skin and keeping it healthy. So that's what happens when we use antiseptic soaps and antiseptic creams and all that. So this is just to mention that, I kind of almost stopped using these commercial soaps and shampoos, which have a lot of all the chemical additives, and I've actually started to choose more natural ones. In fact, my family, my daughter, she makes them herself, and we make them for the family, the soaps and all, okay, and the creams and all. because the commercial ones are actually bad for the skin. They kill the microbiome. So when we have what we call a leaky gut, some of my doctor colleagues, or I won't call them colleagues, some of my doctor community, they laugh when people like me talk about the leaky gut, because they don't really understand what we mean by a leaky gut. A leaky gut means an intestinal barrier that has been impaired. And because of this, the the skin microbiome will be disrupted by the, you can get acne and you can get all kinds of eruptions and all that from a leaky gut. And gastrointestinal disorders are usually accompanied by skin manifestations. That's why when patients come to me with eczema, one of the first things I do is I ask them what they eat, and I ask them about their digestion, and I ask them about their poo. And some people who don't understand the connection will be asking, "Doctor, I came to you for a skin condition. Why are you asking me about my digestion?" But since I've been doing it for many, many years, I think it's more than 10 years that I've been doing it, and I write a lot on my page. So more and more people are starting to realize the reason why I do that. The reason is because what happens in the gut happens to the skin. And I find it amazing that some skin specialists are still saying it doesn't matter what you eat. It doesn't matter what you eat. It has no bearing on eczema. And I'm wondering, what they learned. I mean, I'm wondering what they learned from seeing their patients and giving them steroids and antibiotics and antihistamines and seeing that it doesn't work. But maybe they like it because, when you give a steroid and antibiotics, the skin goes okay for a while and then you get it back. So I think the money is there, you know. People are not getting well. They just hold on and then, sick
Yeah.
again and hold on and sick again.
Mm.
The thing with me is that when my patients get better, I don't see them for years. It's bad for the pocket, really. I don't see them for years and years and years. And they started coming back after this lockdown stuff, all these MCOs and the lockdowns. They started coming back because their diet was bad. So their skin became bad again. So then they started coming. But, doctors don't like it when patients don't see them because they got better. Except for doctors like me, we don't mind because we know that as long as they don't come, that means to say they're okay. Because when we see their record, we say that they got better and then they didn't come. So that's fine. Okay. So I was saying about this. So I'll just summarize it. So these are the bad guys that's present in our what do you call it? Skincare products and hair care products. And so instead of using chemical steroid and antibiotics, why don't we use prebiotics and probiotics and postbiotics? Some skincare companies are actually doing it. And I think that my daughter is also looking into it. In fact, we've already added prebiotic to our soap. We have a soap we call Shamana, because it has got some chamomile, and Manna because it has got gum arabic. And gum arabic is a very, very good prebiotic. So we have a prebiotic soap already. Okay. So this question I think came from you. Does the brain have a microbiome? Well, okay, what we found out that actually the brain might have a microbiome. But generally speaking, if the brain had bacteria, we'd have an abscess in the brain, and we get meningitis and all kinds of nasty diseases in the brain. So it will cause inflammation. So, but the thing is that there was some research, some analysis of post-mortem analysis. So we don't really know whether the bacteria was there before they died. Okay? So we don't know yet is the answer. Does the brain have a microbiome? Okay, so instead of asking whether the brain has a microbiome, we can ask, how is the brain influenced by the guts? So yes, they found out quite some time ago that some of the viruses that cause the common cold might actually decide to reside in the guts, and they can actually cause weight gain. I think I must have some of them in the guts. We will find out about which are the bacteria, the viruses that actually cause weight gain, and get rid of it. Yeah, we'll zap them up. So it has an influence on the weight gain, on your appetite, and all that, on bowel movement. I found that people with bad microbiome, either they get diarrhea or they get constipated, and they also have a effect on how we use our nutrients, and of course the balance of the microbes. Okay, so hold on a second, I can't see this. So this is the main thing here: neurotransmitters in the brain. So this gut, it have got some chemicals that are actually sent to the brain, and they can affect the stress, anxiety, and mood behavior. Okay, and it's all from these little animals in the guts, our friends. Okay, so I'm not gonna talk about this very complex diagram that I have on my left, but just to summarize, that Parkinson's disease is they found that many Parkinson's patients have an E. coli that is causing a misfolded protein that is affecting the brain and causing Parkinson's. And they found that B3 is actually one of the vitamins that is manufactured. Yeah, it is actually the microbes, the bacteria is actually manufacturing B vitamins, and lack of B vitamins was found in motor neuron disease. And autism has been associated with a mother getting infections in the guts in pregnancy. And I hate to mention this, but it has got something to do with the proteins as well. And I am really, really very, very anxious about people getting vaccinated while pregnant, because if at all it causes these proteins to change in the body of the mother, it might affect the baby. All right, I say it very cautiously because it's something that we don't know anything about. The the What happens was that in February they started to give vaccines to pregnant mothers, and these mothers have since given birth to almost 100% healthy babies, but we don't know in terms of their development how they're going to grow up, because these babies are about I think must be about 4 months old now. February, April, May, June, maybe 4 or 5 months old. So we don't really know about the development yet. Okay, so the brain can influence the microbes. Just now I was saying that the microbes can influence the brain. Haha. So if you are under a lot of stress, if you are under a lot of stress, for example, during surgery, there's a lot of norepinephrine produced, and this can result in a pseudomonas growing, and it results in infection in the gut. And they can norepinephrine also stimulates proliferation of strains of pathogens. So kind of like when you are under a lot of stress, kind of like if you're a very angry person and you're angry all the time, or worried all the time, or anxious all the time, you are actually producing a lot of this adrenaline and epinephrine and all that. Those are the sympathetic hormone. The sympathetic nervous system is going to be activated, and you are actually going to feed the bad guys in our guts. Okay, that's the thing that I'm saying. That maybe that's the reason why people are getting more sick now. And I think that having these lockdowns and having people locked up and not able to carry out their go about their normal activities might actually contribute to more people dying from viruses because their immune system goes down, their gut bacteria becomes bad, and they have no resistance left in their bodies. So the benefits of the normal flora, so they can synthesize, excrete vitamin K, B12, B2, B3 as well. And also, as I told you, I gave you the model of the village with a lot of good citizens and a few hooligans. So when there are a lot of good citizens, which means to say the good bacteria, there's actually a lot of good bacteria, and the bad bacteria, the bad guys, will have to behave. But when there are a lot of the bad guys, then the good guys, you won't have enough of that. All right. So how they do that? Maybe they antagonize other bacteria by producing substances which inhibit or kill the bad bacteria. All right. So the benefits of the normal flora also stimulate the development of tissues, intestines, lymphatic tissue, capillary density, and also it stimulates the production of cross-reactive antibodies. So again, they kill off the bad guys. Okay, so now the health problems are being caused by the imbalanced microbiome. I think this is quite obvious that there are autoimmune diseases. Eczema is also one of them. Eczema is not categorized as autoimmune. It is also an immune system problem. But actually, there's a very narrow margin between eczema and psoriasis, for example. And then, of course, we have all the other diseases, cancer, diabetes. All these are immune system problems. Depression, I've already said that because the gut bacteria affects the brain. And then obesity, heart problems, and digestive disorders like Crohn's, IBS, ulcerative colitis, constipation, diarrhea, headaches, and migraine. And what causes the microbiome imbalance? So I've already mentioned a lot of this, but just to summarize, that actually antibiotics, infections, gut infections, pathogens and viruses, any infection actually, you find that many viruses actually cause diarrhea, and even when you say, for example, dengue, and actually it will alter the microbiome. People like to pop pills like non-steroid anti-inflammatory, and this also actually affects the microbiomes. Other medications, stress, hygiene. Actually, I think that we got it wrong when it comes to the hygiene. We use sanitizers, this, that, and the other. I'm not saying that sanitizers are bad. We probably need it to kill off viruses and bacteria at times. Doctors have to use a lot because they deal with sick people who have germs all over their bodies. Okay, drugs, alcohol, C-sections, not breastfed, formula fed, processed food, environmental toxins. I can't even begin to talk about environmental toxins. We're having more and more and more and more. And frankly speaking, it's a very chemical world. But I think that chemical companies and drug companies, they're the richest in the world, yeah? They have the most money. So they actually control what happens to the environment. Okay, so what do we do about it? I've talked about so much bad news, right? I've talked about so much bad news. Fermented food is good. So as I was saying earlier to John, it's not something direct. It's not something direct. You do not directly eat and then you produce this one. But actually, there have been experiments, there have been trials. So it suggests that there are health benefits compared to non-fermented counterparts. So it's actually extremely good to take fermented foods every day. And for my Malaysian audience, please, a belacan is not it, yeah, because we have putrefied food, yeah, putrefied food which we use, but actually that's not really what I mean when I say fermented foods. It's more like pickles. It's more like pickles, like chutney, like kimchi, sauerkrauts, and of course our tapai. And we also have this, the durian that they make into a ferment, tempoyak. Those are the fermented foods. And the best way to eat them is not to cook them, okay? So they do have. And then we have drinks like kefir and kombucha, okay? So chemicals, and more chemicals actually disrupt the microbiome. Okay, so that's why among the things that I always tell my patients, stay away from these aisles in the supermarket, these processed food aisles, because they have a lot of chemicals. And these chemicals are really, really not good for us. So my suggestion, natural fresh food, and include the fermented foods, more plant-based than animal-based. If you want to take supplements, make sure you have some probiotics and prebiotics, as well as other supplements that are actually anti-inflammatory. As I said before, stress can actually increase the possibility of the microbiome changing for the worse. And exercise is actually good to, well, exercise, it will help you to improve your mood, and in that way it also influences the microbiomes to become better. Limiting exposure to environmental toxins. How do we do that? Maybe we should go off the grid. And exposure to good dirt, good dirt. Okay, some dirt is bad, okay? So if dirt is bad, you can get sick. So how do we find good dirt?
I was going to
I
ask a
guess,
question. How do you look at some dirt and say, hey, that's good dirt? Or how do you look at other dirt and say, no, I've got to keep away from there?
yeah, I know. It's not something so easy, but what I think is that it depends on the animals. If the animals in that area are healthy, they don't have a lot of parasites, and they don't have a lot of uh, diseases, then the dirt there would be good. But in general, nowadays the animals are also not eating well, you know, because they are also eating processed food coming from a tin. So the poo that animals have is actually not so good. And you know that the animal poo is usually found in dirt. Okay, so because the animals are not healthy, I don't think it's easy to find good dirt. I suppose good dirt will be in places like where the hunter-gatherers are, possible. Okay, and the thing is that when they did the trials about the East Germany and West Germany, and they have the same climate and all that, but they have a different way of life, even though in the same region. I suppose that the people who were more rural and farming, their animals were also eating well, and so they had animals in the house as well, and the children were more healthy. So I think that is what we mean by good dirt. Okay. So in order to reverse the situation, we should remove allergens, food allergens, gluten, dairy, soy, corn, especially corn syrup and all that, and sugar, and irritants and toxins from the diet. And I'm afraid the bad news is that this is all found in baby formula and baby foods. Crazy, isn't it? We're feeding our babies the things that actually produce bad microbiome, and we can replace them with better choices, actually. Superfoods. Stomach acid is something which can be found as a supplement. The thing is that you treat GERD, for example, using things that actually reduce stomach acid, but by doing so, you're actually making food less digestible, you're encouraging bad bacteria to grow in the stomach and then go down and affect the microbiome. So it's really a bad approach, because the thing is that with heartburn and with GERD, it's not because there's too much acid. It's because the acid has gone into the wrong place. So it's really, and the thing is that with some drugs, it can actually be a factor for triggering stomach cancer. And then there's actually a new kind of treatment whereby you take the microbiome by using the poo. Of course, you don't take the whole poo and put it in, but you kind of like get something from the poo and you inoculate it back. You give a rectal enema of the thing, and it actually worked in many cases whereby the microbiome had gone very, very bad, and so you re-inoculate via an enema, a fecal transplant. And sometimes you take it from the mom to give to the sick child and all that. Okay? And then repair, leaky gut, food, supplements, etc., etc. Okay, probiotics, prebiotics, I've talked about that. And zinc, carnosine, these are all supplements. And then you have the licorice and the glutamine, marshmallow, quercetin, butyrate. These are the substances, these are the supplements that have been found to be helpful in repairing the gut's wall. And of course, correcting the microbiome. And for probiotics, when I mention probiotics, everybody rushes out and buys probiotics. But you know that, if you have eczema and you take a probiotic strain that actually increases the histamine, you're going to get more itching. So for example, there are some bacteria in yogurt that can actually make an eczema worse. So you have to actually study the probiotic and see what strains of bacteria inside the prebiotic to find out whether it's good for you or bad for you. I think it's beyond the scope of this webinar to discuss this, but you can look into it. Yeah, you can look into it. How this which kinds of probiotics will be helpful for which kinds of situations. Okay. And then we have the superfoods, bone broth, because it's got a lot of collagen and minerals. And asparagus, artichokes, they have the prebiotics needed, fermented food. Garlic and onion, they have a lot of this prebiotic, and garlic have got allicin, which is actually anti-inflammatory. And then we have tomatoes. But for tomatoes, it's a solanaceae. So the uncooked ones actually have something that can actually cause inflammation. And the way to take tomatoes, to eat tomatoes, is actually to remove the skin as well as the seeds. Then you get the good parts. Okay. And I've come to the last slide, I think. And maybe we have different ways of treatment. For example, fecal implantation. I know it sounds gross, but actually it works. And then probiotics rather than antibiotics, natural diet and organic farming, and dealing with environmental toxins. We've actually got a lot of work to do, a lot, really a lot. And as I said earlier, John, that I believe that the microbes can be encouraged by microgen, and we probably find I think we can discuss about how which frequencies will actually improve the microbiome. I think that's all from me. And
Yes,
I'm going to stop the share. Do we open it for questioning or
yes, we've got a few questions coming
anything?
in. It was a fascinating presentation, by the way. There's nothing really complicated, really. It's just simple steps and trying not to be excessively clean, avoiding drugs, which include things like just about any drugs, I guess, is suppressing the microbiome in some way, but certainly the antibiotics. But the simple steps is all that's required to improve the health of your microbiome. But it's quite worrying when you went through the list of the diseases that were caused by a defective, a deficient, or a underpopulated microbiome is quite alarming. Um, Now there were
Yes, actually, I think, but actually, it's also good news in the sense that we will be able to look at these diseases from a different point of view. Instead of trying to, many of these diseases don't actually have a treatment.
right,
So if we understand the causes better, we can actually work harder to prevent them and find new approaches to cure them. Don't you think so?
absolutely, absolutely. I've got a question from Ethan Campbell. Now, Ethan, I'll particularly the identity of the person you're talking about in your question. Um, this person that Ethan knows has got SIBO, is diagnosed by stool sample. And as Ethan understands it, it means that there is an overgrowth of certain non harmful strains of bacteria, or maybe even a single strain, in the small intestine, and a deficiency of the same in the large intestine. It results in bloating and poor digestion and assimilation of necessary nutrients. Now, apparently, there is a wave like contraction in the smooth muscle of the small intestine, similar to peristalsis, but not the same, which occurs periodically and keeps the bacteria in balance via to what amounts to a sweeping function. And this is stopped in this person's gut. This person has tried various remedies and they help somewhat, but not tremendously much. Now, what he's asking is there a way to identify the specific bacteria that are overpopulated so that he can target them using Spooky 2? Or do you know of frequencies that can reactivate the smooth muscle action so the body can correct the condition on its own? So, what's your take on that?
I really maybe you can do a biofeedback scan
Yes.
and target the frequencies there. Okay, in Cebu, what happens is that these good bacteria actually not supposed to colonize the small intestine. They are more in the large intestine. There may be small amounts of them in the small intestine, but then they kind of have reverse direction and gone into the small intestine and
Right.
have kind of populated the small intestine, which is not supposed to have a lot of this microbiome.
Yes.
So that's the reason why there's a lot of bloating and all that, because the thing that is supposed to be happening in the large intestine is not happening in the small intestine. So it's a very difficult condition to treat. And conventionally, of course, they use antibiotics to get rid of the bacteria. But
Right.
actually, that is actually not an ideal situation, but it is possible to treat first with the antibiotics, then repopulate with a proper bacteria and all that.
Okay.
But the
Okay.
other alternative is, I think, what you right is to actually target the bacteria that is growing in the small intestine. I'm not very sure how this can be done, but one of the ways I think would be using a biofeedback scan to find out what's happening. Any more questions?
Yes. Now, Sharon is asking, does the biofeedback do the biofeedback results only display the bad guys in our gut? But we both know that it'll give everything that's in our gut. The
Uh, I'm not very sure that using the biofeedback scan is actually going to kill the good guys as well as the bad guys
yeah,
and all that. You see, because in homeopathy, we kind of give the frequency of the disease to treat the disease. And for example, if I wanted to treat a case of a thyroid function, for example, the person may have hyperthyroid or hypothyroid.
right.
One of the things that I will be using is a sarcode called thyroidinum, which is made from the thyroid gland and contains thyroid hormones. So I will give thyroidinum for hyper and hypo. But what the body does with the frequency is it balances it. You see, it doesn't. See, frequencies are different from medicine. If you take a antibiotic, the only thing the antibiotic does is to kill. the organism. But if you give a frequency, the body uses it to balance. So what a frequency is, okay, I have to do this, so it corrects itself. Okay, so it doesn't mean that you're gonna kill anything. What it means is that the body is going to use it because the body has an innate, inbuilt immune system. The body has its own built-in ability to heal. So what you're doing is you are knocking on the immune system and say, hey, you have gone astray. I'm giving you a sermon because you've actually gone astray. You've forgotten your work. Now come back and do your work. So that's what a frequency is. It's a tazkira. It is a sermon to tell your body's ability to heal. In homeopathy, we call it the vital force, to correct itself, because the vital force is not optimum.
Right. Would you suggest using molecular weight frequencies within the Spooky 2 database to emulate antibiotics?
Yeah, it might work, right? Right, it might work. It might work. A molecular weight of a broad spectrum antibiotic might work, right?
Okay.
And of course, it will be less harmful than actually taking an antibiotic.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I told you, John, I'm of course a fan of Spooky 2 and all that, but I haven't spent enough time to really understand how to use it properly. So maybe after this, it will help me to, you're giving me a sermon to up my my Spooky 2 abilities. Yeah, that might work quite well, actually,
Right.
without the side effects.
Yes, yeah.
Good idea.
Good question from Samuel Ibanja. He's asking, do you have any idea whether colloidal silver affects the good microbiome? As you know, lots of people do take colloidal silver, and there's a colloidal silver kit in Spooky 2. So, Samuel is asking whether it will.
Yeah. I think that, I'm not sure why, but I think that it's already been established that it's quite selective in the bacteria that it kills. Kind of like it targets the pathogens.
Okay.
I'm not very sure on that. I'll have to look into it some more. I know that many people actually ingest colloidal silver. It's like this ozone water. Many people drink ozone water. I've actually tried. It doesn't work for me. So I haven't actually tried with colloidal silver. But I think that this thing is something that we don't really know unless we do some research on it and find out what colloidal silver does to the microbiome. Maybe we'll have to look and see whether anybody has done any work on this to study the effect of colloidal silver on the microbiome.
Right.
But from what I know, quite selective.
Okay. What if you were to give our viewers one piece of advice, because we've got into overtime now, so I won't hold you up much longer, but if you can give them just one bit of advice. You've given us a lot of information on how to improve our microbiome, but what is the one most important piece of advice you would give to people?
It's difficult. That's difficult to reduce it to one. But I think that go back to nature. I mean, go back to nature in a positive way. Go back to what is natural. Go back to the pure foods. Go back to the pure air and the pure environments. That's it. I mean, we're living in a jungle, in a chemical jungle.
Right.
We're not supposed to be like this. We're human beings.
And of course, lots of people, we talk about healthy dirt and unhealthy dirt, but some people never see dirt at all because they're living in a concrete city. And the only dirt they'll find is in flower pots. So it's hard. It's hard to live healthy now, I suppose. But
it is. It's a struggle. It's a struggle.
Yeah, but it is
what
how
used
it
to
is.
be something that we took for granted is now difficult. Even if you want to buy chicken that is not got antibiotics, you've got to struggle to get that. And if
Right.
you want to find food that has no chemicals, it's difficult. It's become difficult uh, to get things that our grandmothers took for granted.
Yeah.
So
Well,
kind of not to say that I want us to go backwards, yeah, because some good things happen forwards, like Sukichu, for example, it happens forwards. But there are things that we should, we should look back and see. Okay, those were the times when uh, people were more healthy because they were eating a better diet
it's funny you should talk about going backwards.
and living a better.
It's quite a coincidence because at the moment
Pardon?
it's a coincidence you're talking about going backwards. We are going to be giving away a 500-year-old book, which has wisdom which is
Oh,
still relevant today, and it's going to be another way that we try and pass our love forwards by trying to teach people how to change their life, make their life more fruitful, more meaningful, and on a superficial level, make it seem like they're more lucky. Because some people think, oh, they get all the worst luck. They always miss out on promotions or never win this or that. Well, this book explains in great detail how you can change things for the better. But it's 500 years old, and you're talking about going back in time to make things better. Well, quite possibly 100 years ago, things were much better than now in many ways. So if we can recognize and try and not let go, and as soon as we get a generation which never knew of what happened in the past or how good it was, then it's lost. So we can't let that happen. So we're going to be giving away this 500-year-old book to keep some knowledge alive. But thank you so much for
obviously.
thank you for coming into our show. It's been
You're
wonderful
welcome.
to have you with us. It's great to meet a friend who I thought I'd never speak to in person, face to face. Um,
I'm
as I said,
surprised you remember me.
well, a lot of people when Spooky first started out, it was very small, of course, so there weren't that many customers anyway. But I came to realize even very, very early on that the customers that we were having were different from what you'd regard as just cold, hard, fast customers. I sent you two spooky pulses instead of one, for example, and then immediately you contacted me and told me, "Hey, I've made a mistake." Right? Now, how many people would actually do that? But you would do if you're a kind-hearted soul and you always want to do the right thing. And so, right from that day, I realized that you were such a person. So, of course, I remember you.
Thank you.
And thank you for your early support. And you've helped make Spooky what it is now today. So, thank you for
I
accepting
don't
our
really think so.
invitation. Thank you for our invitation to the show. It's been wonderful, and we've learned a lot about the
Mhm.
microbiome and how we can
Okay.
repair the damage.
Mm. Well, I hope that people who listen in benefited from it or will benefit from it. I hope so.
Oh, they will. They will. It's up to them now whether they accept it and implement what they've learned. Some people just listen to it. Well, that's interesting, but it's like everything else they view on the internet, on the computer. It's entertainment. But this is more than entertainment. Information that you've given can be life-changing, life-improving, and health-giving. So my advice is for people not just to listen to you and tune out and go on to some other entertaining type site on the internet or play games. Think about it and do it. Make the change. And thank you very much for all the attendees, the participants to the SAMA. Thank you for your input and your participation. It's as always greatly appreciated. So thank you very much. And yes, Ethan, I'm talking about you as well. Who told me to put my microphone on mute because my background noise was interfering with your presentation. So good advice. Well, thanks once again. It's been wonderful having you with us. And everybody, please keep on passing the love forwards. The world needs more love, needs more love from you. So help people that you love, help people that you don't love. Help people and keep on passing it forwards. Make the world a better place. So until next time, goodbye.